Okay. Welcome into the latest edition of the Spot Track Podcast. Brandon Kravitz here, your host for the day, along with the money man himself, Mike Ginnitti. There is money to be made out there, not just by these athletes, but by you as well. Bettor Edge is the place to do it. Our go-to source for peer-to-peer social betting, offering better prices, softer lines, daily contests, weekly competitions. Eliminate the VIG and put the power back in your hands. Humble brag here, Mike. My ROI on Bettor Edge over the last 25 bets I have made is over 50%. That's not the betting percentage. That's the return on investment. I'm 19-6 in the last 25 bets that I've made on Bettor Edge. Hot, hot, hot. Sign up for the first time. Get $20 on the house just by using the promo code SPOTTRACK. So how about that? I don't know how much longer it's going to last. Well, isn't it funny how it works like that? When you lose a bet, you regret making the wager. When you win a bet, you regret not placing more on said bet. So there's always regret that is layered in whether you win or lose. But once you can get over that mental hurdle, and find some systems, Mike, for me, I think I maybe have mentioned this to you before. I love betting Major League Baseball unders. I love taking a bad lineup. I love taking a great pitcher. It's not complicated. And there are certain parks that you want to avoid, like Fenway. But if the wind's blowing in out in San Francisco and things like that, that's the kind of stuff that I target. The month of May was the most profitable unders month in Major League Baseball in the last 10 plus years. So that
you got to bank on the bad weather, right? You can sort of track that right now. That'll even out a little bit when we get to the dog days, but yeah, that's a nice little play for you. I'm still a halftime guy. I like to take the adjustments that are thrown at me at halftime and try to figure out if it's going to be a runaway train or if the underdog can kind of close down a little bit and close that gap enough. So that's sort of where I live after about a half.
I love that. I mean, and that's the important thing. Find a system, find what works for you, and get the best price available. And you at least you won't lose your ass doing this. Mike, we are a Pacers win away from the middle of America NBA Finals. How do you think the league is grappling with this idea that you're going to have most likely Oklahoma City, and maybe by the time you're listening to this, the Pacers have punched their ticket as well. They have Game 5 at MSG tonight. But that, I guess I'm glad for them that they already signed their TV deal, because I can't imagine this is going to be a ratings behemoth.
I don't think it's that bad. I've already seen it. The mess is out there, and if you get down too many rabbit holes in social media, anything can become reality. So I just think there's enough storylines here, right? We do have the league MVP, right? We do have some prolific high draft picks here, and Halliburton alone has been polarizing both positively and negatively, and he's got the dad aspect to bring to it, which can be fun if the league allows for something like that. So I don't know, there's enough here, there's enough juice with these two teams to, I think, carry the day. I'm not sure, would a Knicks Lakers final be that much percentage wise greater in terms of ratings, do you think, than what we're about to see?
I think
significantly, like double digits ahead.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I think there are that many more Lakers and Knicks fans, because it's not only are you bringing in a much higher percentage of those markets that are much more densely populated, but you also have the proliferation of all of those fans across the country. I think the NBA, more than any other league that we talk about, has fans in different markets that never even grew up in these cities, that have no ties whatsoever to the actual market themselves.
Yeah. Just pop culture.
For these teams.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. But look, Knicks fans can cheer for Isaiah Hartenstein and Obi Toppin, and Lakers fans can put their hat in for Alex Caruso, right? Everybody wins here. Middle America and the coastlines, everybody wins.
You're right about that. Keith Smith shared the stat of the week on Twitter. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers would be the first NBA finals since the luxury tax was in effect, where neither team is a taxpayer. How incredible is that? And could you help to maybe layer in some historical context to that incredible stat that Keith threw out there?
I didn't see it coming. I'm not sure Keith saw it coming. He, he's got his spreadsheets alongside of all the work he does from a database perspective for us at SpotTrack. So he's burning and churning these kind of things out. So he probably has a list of taxpayers year by year here that he can bring to the effect, and maybe I'll have him do so on Twitter following this recording. But it's an unbelievable stat in this modern era of sports, not just with the NBA, but just to think, how much we've highlighted the Tampa Bay Rays in Major League Baseball and Cleveland to some effect as well, sort of getting to the finish line with low payrolls. But you can pretty much go bananas in Major League Baseball, right? We've got these strict rules now in the NBA that is somewhat helping parity, but this is not a parity conversation. This, in both cases, it is, we are stripping these teams down to the bare bones, and we're going to take basically a decade long of pain and do this the only way that we think is possible in our current markets. And we're just going to hope it all comes together for a 2-3 year window where it's going to be, historically great. And that's what both these teams are. Very different manners, right? Indiana, as we mentioned last time, kind of traded themselves to this point, but not OKC. OKC is a draft and develop. I mean, what? The pioneer. They are the absolute. They are what all small baseball teams, all smaller football teams, and certainly all small market NBA teams dream to be now. But this is just an impossible win. I mean, you just don't have these kind of storylines. So, yeah, to be non-tax paying teams in the NBA Finals is historic. And oh, by the way, I talked to Keith this morning, specifically on the heels of this tweet. He does not believe OKC is going to be a tax team next year either. So,
Well, I was looking at their
done. Yeah,
their free agency list. Their unrestricted free agents will make you laugh when you look at how good this team is. Let me give you some of the names that Oklahoma City is going to be losing.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Mitchell, Jalen Williams, not the great one, Brandon Carlson, never heard of him, Alex Dukas, and Adam Flagler.
Yeah, there's a pretty good chance you probably mispronounced 3 of those names. That's how little they're about to lose on July 1st. Yeah, it's going to be very, very little impact. And the only way that things change drastically next season is if they force it, right? If they force some sort of round peg square hole move that upends their financials and maybe their roster to some degree, but they certainly don't have to. And by the way, that in itself is going to be rare in this league because every team, for an apron reason, for a tax reason, for a roster reason, is going to make a significant move this offseason, and OKC is simply not going to have to.
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day with Sham saying this is going to be the wildest offseason ever. I do think it's possible that you have teams across the league that look at how they want to maneuver their offseason and say, I think we can run it back with the roster we have, given the landscape of the NBA right now. This is a new era of parity. We have a new champion every year. Look at the teams that are in the Final Four right now. There is not a super team among them. So perhaps we can just fine-tune some small things and then make it to the finish line next year. I think there will be another frame of mind, perhaps, that is taken on by some of these teams that say, because there's all this parity in the NBA, we can take this league over with the right move. Yeah. Which of those do you think will be the prevailing action when we get to the summer?
It's a really fascinating yin and yang, right? Because I think your latter point, let's just put every chip we have in, is Boston last year, is Boston the last 2 years. And it worked, obviously. And it probably should have worked again this year. So that's been a successful approach if you have a layer of draft success that you can then build on with aggressive offseason movement. But if we're trying to bring this back to OKC, and can other teams try to do this, Brandon? I don't think there's another franchise looking around, maybe San Antonio, maybe because of what they've afforded themselves. Maybe they're trying to follow this path. But in terms of like acquiring a Giannis or a Kevin Durant or all these names we're going to hear this offseason, I wonder if the value of the first round pick is at its highest level in this league. And it's always been high. And certainly a lottery pick is, as premium as things get. But there's going to become a time when teams are going to look at the landscape of the league and just start to punt on these bigger contracts. And by the way, I do believe that's what this CBA is meant to do. It is meant to, without saying it out loud or maybe not even whispering it yet, it is meant to start to suppress this financials, which we have to all agree are getting ridiculous, right? And great for the players, but we're headed towards 80 a year. We're only a few years away from 100 a year. And you can give me roster sizes and all the TV money. And I know, I understand the revenue streams, but there's no question in my mind that the legalese inside this CBA and the restrictions that come with it are looking for teams to do more of what OKC has done and less about what Boston and the Lakers and some of these teams that still are trying to build and maximize year in and year out these monster mega 5-man rosters going forward. So, I think we'll have divergence with front offices for years to come still. There's not going to be a straight, line in the sand. But the CBA is definitely pointing us in the draft and develop mode more and more. And that's going to rely on college basketball and these academies to really step up their game. Otherwise, the entire product of professional basketball will suffer, and that's just going to be the long term.
So I think you're spot on. I think looking at this from the draft angle is a really sharp way to contextualize this. I've just plucked 4 important names that we are likely to see in the NBA Finals. The Thunder, as of this recording, have already punched their ticket. The Pacers are likely to do so because the Knicks have about a 2% chance to win this series. Aaron Nesmith, one of the key role players for the Pacers, 14th overall pick. Jalen Williams of the Oklahoma City Thunder, their second best player, 12th overall pick. Tyrese Halliburton, who has emerged as perhaps the premier point guard in the NBA, 12th overall pick. Right. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, your league MVP, 11th overall pick. These are middle of the road draft picks. This is no longer that's crazy that Giannis went 14th or Jokic went in the second round. This has now become a full-blown trend in the NBA that if you are good at scouting and development, that you can change your franchise with a middle round first round pick. And for years, Mike, that was never the case in the NBA. If you didn't pick top 3, you were screwed as far as finding a superstar.
It's super fair. And by the way, there's a lot of NFL data that matches this too. And some of it comes down to, above average players going to better teams and better situations. And, there's a lot going in this conversation, but it's a reality. There's not just 3 players in every draft. You know what I mean? That's why so many of these other shows spend hours and hours doing redrafts because the 20th player ended up being the second best player in a draft 4 or 5 years down the road. So you're right. There's a lot of technology around sports right now. And if your front office isn't plugging as much money and brain power and technological power into the advancement of scouting and analytics in terms of where players can end up in terms of their fitness and their growth and things like that, then you're probably 4 or 5 steps behind the game right now, because that is what the OKCs of the world have been doing for the last 3 years just to try to keep up with the big boys in this league.
Last thought on this from the Pacers side. I gave you the list of no names that are going to be unrestricted free agents on the Thunder side, so they can effectively run it back. They made it to the finals, so why would they change anything? I think that conversation about making a big move would have been more that would have held more weight had they been knocked out by the Timberwolves, but that didn't happen. For the Pacers, I'm not going to go down the whole list because it's a bunch of names that I'm not familiar with. But Miles Turner is a big one. He's an unrestricted free agent. And then Thomas Bryant has been a helpful role piece, but you can replace him fairly easily. Miles Turner is the big one. Do you think Indiana is going to be able to make a play for him, or are they just going to have to punt on their big man, their stretch 5?
I think it's expected as of right now, Brandon, that he returns to Indiana, which means they become a tax team.
Yeah.
And Keith's stat dies in existence after 2025. But I don't know why they would take the gas pedal off at this point in time. The East is weak and could get weaker this offseason based on some of these reports, right? With Giannis and whatever the Knicks do, and to some degree, Philadelphia and their mess. So it's a good time to be the Pacers. I don't know why they would forcibly try to blow up this window by doing something like that and not paying a little bit of an overpay to keep him off the market. They've got the rights, obviously. Now, you want to talk about a sign and trade or something like that, because they're not a tax team. They've got carte blanche in terms of the lack of restrictions, whereas some teams simply can't even pick up the phone in that kind of conversation. So maybe weigh all the options, see if you can get a little bit younger, maybe find yourself a draft pick to replace Miles Turner with, which is risky, of course, but I would expect at this point in time that they become a tax team and bring back Turner for at least 2-3 years on a full guarantee.
So that's the positive side of sports. Now let's talk about the teams on the bottom end as we head to the diamond to talk about the atrocious Colorado Rockies. Still, as of this recording, have yet to record their 10th win on the season. Simple question here, followed by some more complex one. Is this team worse than the Chicago White Sox last year, the 41-win Chicago White Sox?
I don't even think it's close. I don't even think it's close. Now, I enjoy watching Colorado Rockies baseball a little bit more because of the scenery and some of the things that come with it. There's just something about
such a wasted ballpark. That place is beautiful.
Yeah. And I will say this, Colorado has shelled out internally. They have extended way more players than I thought they should have over the course of the past 2 or 3 seasons to try to keep, the band together and some notable names on the roster for attendance purposes only. But that hasn't come with a rash of free agent signings. If you haven't seen my tweet from this week, I think it's about $30 million spent on 10 players in free agency over the past 3 off seasons. That's not going to cut it. Now, it also should be noted that players probably don't want to join the Colorado Rockies, A, because of the roster, B, because of the stadium and the altitude and everything that comes with the Colorado Rockies. But there's no question in my mind that the math is fully with them to become the worst winning percentage team in the history of this league in 2025. So if nothing else, watch them for that alone.
So I did some backlog research here. 2021 is the last year that they weren't in last place in their division. Just last place. That was the bar that I'd set for them. And by the way, 2021, they were second to last. So it's not like they were significantly better. And then I thought, okay, when's the last time they won this division? And this is the one that really hit me over the head. They have never won the NL West. Ever. Not once.
To be fair, it's a behemoth of a division. I mean, you're going from some absolute monster superstar players in this division over the past 30 years. Truly. I mean, through the Barry Bonds era into this Ohtani and this mess of a Dodgers era. So
when did they switch to 4 divisions?
That's a good question. You're right.
That would be because the Rockies came into existence in 93.
Yeah. Look, this team has been good. They have had their runs. And I know a lot of people came to Spot Track looking to find them at the bottom of the payroll list. They're not there. They're 20th right now. They do have significant contracts on this roster. They've got 5 players making at least $10 million this year. But that Chris Bryant contract, the largest contract in their history, is just a mess. He's not a healthy human being, and he won't be, I don't think, ever for his career. So you get something like that on your books, and small market teams just can't recover.
Well, and that's the thing too. It's like just based on some of the work that you've done on this, it looks like the Rockies have actually somewhat tried.
That's what I was trying to say.
One of the differences from them and some of the awful teams that we've seen in recent history with inside of Major League Baseball's, those teams have been really bad on purpose. It doesn't seem like the Rockies are doing this because they want to be awful. They just are they're really bad at putting a roster together. By the way, the year is 1994 is when Major League Baseball went to divisions, a year after the Rockies came into the league. So that is not an excuse. You would think at one point they would accidentally win the division. They had Galarraga and Dante Bichette. They had some good teams over the years. Never won the division.
I don't think anybody's pining with them to change their course. You know what I mean? For having the big financial roster construction discussion, it's just a swing and a miss phase, right? It's just we threw a bunch of money. We threw as much money as we could at players that wanted to be here, which is a small list, and it just didn't go our way. You know, they weren't able to find value really in any of these pieces. So now the question becomes, how do they react? Because if they're going to win 30 games, 29 games, whatever the hell the math says they should win, how much of this do they start purging? We've already seen teams like the Angels and the Athletics start to DFA notable veteran players, right? They're already in purge mode, and it's May 29th. So at some point in time, the Rockies are going to get there, and some halfway decent above average players, especially position players, are going to find themselves in really nice situations down the stretch here in 2025. But again, I don't think there's going to be a conversation of this team just didn't do enough, or they should be reprimanded for the way that they've handled the last 4 to 5 seasons. It's just a really bad run of bad luck, bad signings in a behemoth of a division that they just can't even get near the surface with.
Well, and that's what I want to wrap this portion of the conversation with, exactly that, because I don't know how you could have any hope when you're this far away inside of that division. This division it's always been tough. It hasn't always been this tough. You know, now what you're going up against is the best team hands down in Major League Baseball, a very well-run Giants organization, and the Diamondbacks, who have been on the come up for the last couple of years. So, and the Padres, by the way, who spend a ton. So you're up against it. What would you do? What would be the first move you would make if you were running the Colorado Rockies to say, let's create some level of hope for the fans?
You're going to hate this answer. I'm going to walk up to the owners and I'm going to say, you got to build us a new stadium. And it's got to happen immediately, because not only are we not a destination because of the altitude and the parameters of this current stadium, right? People think that Coors Field is just a home run haven, right? It's just where people go to smash the ball out of the park. It's got the most doubles, the most triples. It's just an extra base haven. So teams that can show up but can't hit home runs, but have speed, win ball games there. You can do anything you want in that ballpark. So they need to build a ballpark that is winnable in, that they can build a roster that they can look to and say, we have a true home field advantage because we can build a roster this way that suits us specifically for our 81 home games. And that's just the team we're going to be. Not unlike the Yankees, which I know is a terrible comparison from a financial standpoint, but the Yankees have a roster that is suited towards their stadium.
With all the lefties and all of that.
Yeah. Colorado can't do that. And if they're already underwater because of so many other obstacles, right? At least fix that one. At least give yourself a chance with your 81 home games. So that's my play. It's not roster construction. We got to start over. This is a great city. It's a destination city, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
It's a great sports town.
Yeah.
One of the best.
We got to pump some billions of dollars into a brand new stadium to try to give us some sort of competitive advantage on the field.
All right. That idea only cost us about $1 billion.
Not my money. I'm just going to keep talking about it.
Hey, you're hired. I thought it sounded good. Let's talk about Aidan Hutchinson. He is seeking a new deal with the Detroit Lions. He missed the final 12 games last year with a broken leg. How is that going to impact his negotiations with the team?
Detroit's been really good about this stuff. Really, really good. And I understand it. You know, it's one of those situations where one wrong misstep, even just publicly, if it seems like they're doing something a little shady behind the scenes, and they can really ruin this entire window that they're in. I thought they handled the Goff stuff perfectly. You know, the St. Brown contract was on its surface way more than any of us anticipated, even though from a guarantee stuff, you know, and a fluff matter, it's much, much back down to earth. But, you know, they've extended everybody that we've got in a bullet point right now, saying, hey, this guy's coming up. He should probably get done. They're doing it right. Not quite as aggressively as a Philadelphia or one of those teams, but nowhere near Cincinnati, right? If those are the two, if that's the spectrum that we have to deal with here, Detroit's much more towards Philadelphia in terms of handling this window of success. They're just going to have to probably go bigger and better than they want to, and hope, and obviously use their internals to understand just what kind of recovery Aidan Hutchinson can get to. I don't think 100% is expected, despite the fact that he's young. He just plays one of those positions where these kind of things are going to come back to haunt him at some point in time. But he's also not in the Myles Garrett conversation, right? Because that now, not unlike the other contract they have on the Cleveland Browns books, has become sort of that unicorn contract that just sits up there that we can look at and reference at times, but it's not really a contract that we can compare other metrics to, right? Because it was on the heels of, if this guy leaves town, if we really have to trade him, well, we're dead in the water for 3-4 years. We have to start everything completely over again. And that's not the Aidan Hutchinson situation. So, we're talking about a $35 to $38 million per year contract in terms of the APY, and something in the range of 100 to 110 million guaranteed, which is a lot. But, timeline wise, which I think was your original question, I don't think waiting makes sense, despite the fact that he did miss 12 games and there's a lot to that injury going forward. I just think they have to keep what they've been doing, which is kind of beat the rush, beat the public outcry with these contracts, and just get something on the books right now that satisfies both sides. And if they have to eat one of these, they'll do so, but not yet. They've been pretty spot on with their numbers and their guarantee structure.
I'm curious about the designation that you guys have at SpotTrack.com and how NFL GMs view this, because you have different categories for defensive end and for edge.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I mean, are we just talking semantics here? Because this is essentially the same thing.
So really the edge is edge is just a bucket where we pull in all the DEs to some degree. There are some DEs that are treated like interior defensive linemen that play a little bit more of a 3-set, and they're inside more than they're outside. So there's a lot of semantics with that, but more so it's let's get all these edge rushing DEs, and then any of these outside linebackers that are
basically, if you sack the quarterback, you're in the edge.
If your primary role is to get to the quarterback, you're an edge defender. So it's just one of those containers that we built to include most, but not all of those two positions underneath it.
But you would say that's how NFL GMs look at that as well, right?
No,
they don't.
No question.
Okay.
But it's important when you're talking about, trades and free agency and where players are going to end up, because if you've got an outside linebacker that is going to a system where his role is going to change, maybe it's not a great fit. So it's important to understand the dichotomies of what a player has done over his career and if they can be versatile going forward.
Let's get to our quick hits to wrap today's episode. You have a new quarterback piece that's coming out over on SpotTrack.com. I believe it's even up right now as we speak. Mm-hmm. What are we looking at there? What are you teaching us this week?
Yeah, I've done this annually. It's the dust is now settled with free agency and the draft and the UDFAs, and we have at least a quarterback room with each team for the summer, and that's a projected QB1 and then a list of 3 to 4 backup quarterbacks that are going to get sorted out here over the next couple of months. And I literally go player by player in terms of how their contracts look, the guarantees with all of them, even, the 4th quarterback on the roster right now that was latched on as a UDFA. But mostly it's targeting these QB1s and what their contracts look like and just how rock solid these early guarantee triggers are. And if needed, some entities could be traded after this year or could be released after this year, or in the case of the Pittsburgh Steelers, my stability rating is less than none. So it's a team by team, player by player breakdown from a contractual standpoint, but also a stability standpoint going forward.
Jalen Ramsey was put on the block a couple of months ago. The noise quieted down a little bit. Now it seems like it's starting to heat up again. Where are we at timeline-wise as it pertains to a Ramsey deal?
Yeah, it only went away because nothing could contractually happen until June 1st because the contract is a mess from a dead cap standpoint. So I think the plan has always been for Ramsey and the Dolphins to divorce this offseason. It's just now we're at the point of time where things can actually start to happen. He's basically said as such that he's looking on to his next chapter, wherever that may be. We've already had some teams rumored to be in the mix. It's essentially a 1 for $21 million contract unless Miami eats some of this salary, and there is some salary to be eaten here. We'll see, though. I think that the interest will be somewhat low, lower than anticipated. He's 30 going on 31 here when the season starts, certainly in the twilight on the back end of this career. So that 1 for 21, it's not daunting, but it's not value either. So we'll see where it gets to. And man, more dead cap for this Dolphins team that is just I don't know. If they don't win ball games this year, Brandon, they're going to be my star team for the 2026 offseason in terms of where do we go from here and just how messy do the financials get. And if that has to include Tua in this conversation, look out, because things could get historically bad from a rip it up and start over situation.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a team that could go in either of two extreme directions, because the Dolphins won 9 games last year and Tua barely played. And so there is upside there. You had a down year from Tyreek Hill. You had a down year from Jalen Waddle. Your quarterback was injured. High-priced guys didn't play well. But there's upside there. So this team really could go in either direction. If Tua gets hurt again or he underperforms, then you could be talking about if they're in the bottom 5, then we're going to be talking about the Dolphins drafting a quarterback. So there's a lot of wiggle room here as far as how this could go. I have no good read on the Miami Dolphins right
now. I'll bury the lead on this quarterback piece. There's a pretty clear out for Tua after 2026.
Interesting.
So 2 years, but it could be, you're right, if they're at the bottom of the list here in 2025, you draft that kid next April, and whether you play him or not, becomes the offseason discussion. But you're only looking at basically a 1 year guaranteed with Tua through 2026, and then a little bit of, I think it's like a $3 million buyout to 2027 just to keep him on the roster. So it's not super elongated like Jacksonville has with Trevor Lawrence, and to some degree, Justin Herbert with the Chargers, if that continues to be a little bit cloudy. It's a little bit better of a situation, but overall, I think Miami, financially speaking, is praying to the heavens that they're a 10-plus win team this year. Otherwise, look out.
Yeah, and I can tell you inside the state of Florida, Tua has 1 year left with the fans. Trevor has 2. So it works out timeline-wise. Trevor Lawrence could be bad again, and Jags fans will still want him to be their quarterback for another year.
Yeah. Well, they're going to have to, because it's a 4-year guarantee.
Well, good. See, since Saturday, Juan Soto is 0 for 16 at the plate. Are we getting any buyer's remorse in Queens? Of course, they won't admit that out loud, but you tell me, you're the Mets fan.
This has been a very sensitive subject, obviously, as somebody who has seen, and I'm not exaggerating, every single Juan Soto at bat as a New York Met. I've seen every single one. And he does look lost. And anybody who knows baseball, even a little bit, knows that there's a big mental situation happening. And I have no idea if that includes the fact that, the contract is massive. I guess I'll just say it this way and hope that things iron out, because we're only like a third of the way through this season. There's still 14 and a half years to go on this contract, right? So he's going to get it right at some point in time. It just might not be in 2025. That's all.
That's well put by you. Let's take some patience on. Caitlin Clark is out 2 weeks. She just missed her first basketball game since high school. Give me a rough estimate of what the league loses revenue-wise. That's going to be a very tough number, and ratings-wise with her off of the floor. Just a general metric of how big this is, even though it's only 2 weeks, but it's 2 weeks at a time of the year where there's not a lot else going on. So this is a huge time for the WNBA to lose their top star.
First of all, I have to ask, you didn't adjust your trip for that Angel Reese Caitlin Clark matchup, did you?
I did not, but I have not done that yet. But she will be back for that one. So
I don't know.
It's still possible.
Like these leg injuries, they linger, man. I saw 2 stats. I have no idea if they're true, but it's still worth mentioning. Caitlin Clark is worth about 25% of the league's revenue. I think that's probably right from last year. Just understanding the attendance and where things are headed and where the CBA is headed after 2026. And Caitlin Clark games throughout the league last year had more attendance, dollar for dollar, person for person, than 5 NBA teams' games last year. So it's real. It's real that there's an absolute boom happening right now. Is it fair to say it's just her? I don't think so, but it is, of course, primarily her and all of the aura and juice that she brought from the college game and that incredible run. So, again, this entire window, and I'll include Paige Beckers in this, who's already looking really strong in Dallas, is elite and is something that every startup league, which is what the WNBA was for 25 years, preceding this window. It's what that a league needs to actually get themselves into the black and into a situation of stability. And now it's time to start talking about the CBA for real and what this is going to mean for these player salaries, for revenue sharing, for the TV markets, for the streaming markets, and where things can actually go from here. And I've heard the commissioner speak now a couple of times in the past few weeks. And I think there's a heck of a lot of both belief and plans in place to make this thing stick. So the injury is crushing because of all the attention that she's brought in with the Angel Reese mess and the investigation and what that matchup is going to be. So if you're right and she's back, I think we can recover all of this lost revenue within that one game alone inside of Chicago. But the impact is it's epic. I'm not sure that there's a singular player in team sports that is driving his or her league like she is right now and has been through last year.
No. They play at Chicago in a couple of days, so she will miss the next game in Chicago.
The Fever game. Okay.
But then they play at Chicago again at the end of July, which is 2 days before I get to Chicago. So that would be the third installment of the versus Angel Reese, but she is going to miss the second one. But you're right in terms of the impact player for player. This is very Michael Jordan-like in what it feels like, where that one player is significantly a hotter ticket than everybody else. And if that player is announced as out, then those tickets go from 300 a pop to 10. I looked at the Washington Spirit is who they played last night. You could get in for $10. I assure you that was not the case when Caitlin Clark was healthy. It's just incredible value that she brings to the league. Let's get to our Bettor Edge bet of the week. I'm going season win total for us today. Put your money where your mouth is, Mike. You're in the Buffalo market. The Bills are set at a sky-high 11.5 wins in the upcoming NFL season. I'll let you decide. Would you like to go over or under on Josh Allen's Buffalo Bills?
This is a slam dunk lock. I don't even know the other terminology words. Whatever you would do if you believe in a bet wholeheartedly, it's an over for me. This is minimum 13 this season for the Bills.
I would have said the exact same thing, but I will take the under reluctantly, but I think you're on the right side of this. This episode has been presented by Bettor Edge. Sign up, try it out, bet with your friends, and use the promo code SpotTrack at sign up over at bettoredge.com or on the Bettor Edge app. Also, subscribe and rate the pod that you're enjoying right now, and visit SpotTrack.com for all of the latest, including a new piece on NFL QBs. Till next time, see you, Mike.